All right, everybody, welcome back live at Drew's house. Another edition. Hope everybody is doing well. I think we're going to get out of that first slump of July rain. That was crazy. The whole first half of July, it seemed like we had rain. But hopefully getting better here for the second half. Hope everybody is doing well out there, though, staying healthy and all that good stuff. Going to get right to my guest today because he's all loaded up and ready to go. We're going to bring in Danny Ventura. Danny, how are you?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing good. So Danny is a sports writer, covers really nobody that probably has a better feel for the high school sports out there than Danny. He works with Boston Herald. I was just telling him off the air, we used to do the hockey games for the Newburyport Clippers, and Danny, you could just look at his Twitter. He was great. He had the pulse of everything high school sports.
Oh, thank you.
What was it like covering high school sports in the pandemic? That must not have been easy.
I'll tell you, there's no game plan for it. Once you get into the season, it was fine. It's just that, having 4 seasons condensed into 3, there was no break whatsoever. So it was tough. But, somehow we all got through it.
What was I know obviously the teams had to go through not a lot of, fans in the stands and that sort of thing for a big chunk of the year. Were you guys allowed in to cover a lot of the sports with empty stadiums?
Yeah, as long as we followed the guidelines, wear the masks, respect the social distancing and all that. But the schools were fine. They allowed us access to cover the kids. Just as long as you were smart.
What was some of your favorite stories of the year?
Well, I think, what's funny is that, once you get into the season, it's just, the thing that was interesting was when, there is no, like, for instance, last August and September, where we didn't know if we were going to have a season. So, just trying to find stories. And you really dig. That's where you earn your keep is, once the season starts, the stories are there. But when there's no games or anything, you really have to search far and wide.
Yeah. So did you find one in the pandemic that kind of jumps out at you that you wrote and you said, you know what, that's a good find?
Well, I wouldn't say as much one I wrote, but one that Tom Mulhern wrote was on the athletic director at Wellesley, John Brown. His wife is going through serious health issues, and here's an athletic director who's trying to balance, working through a pandemic and dealing with his wife's illness. And it was just something that really, it just resonated with a lot of people. It just brought the fact that, hey, there's more to life than just, a regular game.
What was the feeling when you go through a tough year like this and, you don't know what's going on with people at home, but there's so many people who are having a tough time during the pandemic. What was your general vibe from coaches? Were they, was it just an emotionally draining year for coaches across the board?
There's no question about it. There were a lot of coaches who said that they would struggle if they had to go through it again. Because, they would, like, as I said earlier, there's no game book, game plan or whatever for something like this, coaching in a pandemic. These guys, basketball coaches, you have to, social distancing, wash the basketballs, breaks, be careful with the water and all that stuff. So there were a lot of coaches who were pretty exhausted by the end of this. And these were shorter seasons than normal. And they were pretty exhausted by the end of it.
I was saying, you hear some of the older adults who kind of removed from high school and high school sports, and, they would say, hey, the kids, the senior year was messed up, but, they're young. It'll be fine. But you remember, that's a hard thing to lose your senior year. And I'm sure you saw some really tough stories of kids that just had that way.
They tug on your emotions. These kids who all, you practice, you play for 3 years, you're all loaded up for your senior year, and they tell you, oh, by the way, no senior season. Pretty devastating for a lot of kids.
It really was. Was there a story, kind of an inspiring comeback story that you liked? Because I know you followed all sorts of sports here. Now that we're kind of moving out of it, I'm sure you saw a lot of smiling faces just to be back out there again. But
it just, when you talk to kids, these kids, a lot of them who didn't play last year and got the chance to get out there this year. You look at a team like Xaverian baseball, who wound up winning the Division I state championship. They really felt that they were going to have a good team last year, and it kind of got taken away from them. So this is almost like a new lease on life. And they're not the only ones. Taunton softball was in the same boat. They were a team that probably would have won it all last year, wound up coming back and, getting that chance to play for a state title. Those are the things that jumped out.
I don't know about you. I felt, and I'm far removed from it. I'm just a guy that grew up near the high school and used to hear the sounds of Thanksgiving football and all that. But I saw you tweeting about some Thanksgiving football earlier today, or maybe it was yesterday. I can't remember. But it got me thinking. Guys like you must have just been lost on Thanksgiving, not having a Thanksgiving football game to go to.
Well, it's funny. I wound up going to Florida. I flew out that day. But it was like that morning. It's like, because usually you get up, the games are at 10, but you're really jacked up for the game. So you're getting up at 6:30. You usually leaving the house by 8 o'clock. And, last Thanksgiving is like, shouldn't I be doing something here?
Yeah.
So it was definitely different. And again, you go back to the seniors who lost that. And that's who you feel bad for. Because, and nothing against, the freshman, sophomores, and juniors, but they're going to get another crack at the pie. But for a senior, this is it. Especially if you're a designated captain. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine how tough it was for those kids.
I will say we talked to a lot of the high school athletes around here, and the Newburyport Tritons of the world, Pentucket, Sainsbury's, and I will say that is one thing I've been very impressed with, was as tough that is on the seniors. They all tried to, almost across the board, they all tried to set a good example and say the right things. And you know what? There'll be tougher things that come up in life, and just try, because they don't want to be the ones that bring a program down by sulking and and quitting. It was impressive.
Yeah, I agree with you. A lot of kids really showed a lot of maturity, and there were some cases where they probably showed more maturity than the grown-ups, who were frustrated because in a lot of cases early on they did not get the opportunity to get in there and see their kids play, so they were not too happy, and I understandably so. It's their kids who are playing. I would like to see my kid play, and communities were saying we can't do this for health and safety reasons. So that caused a lot of friction early on. I think the kids, I can't imagine what it was like playing with a mask, because especially the sports where you're doing a lot of running.
Yeah.
Kudos to these kids who they did it, but they, like I said, they made the sacrifices just to get out there.
You make such a good point too about the parents, because that is such a big part about this. I know some of the athletic directors I've talked to, that was some of the biggest pressure was parents, and some of the ADs I've talked with have said, some of the times I would deliver the rules and how you can't come, you have to watch on the stream or whatever, and sometimes the ADs would say, I'm not even sure if I believed what I was saying, but I knew I had to deliver the message to these parents.
Oh yeah, I mean they got caught in the proverbial between a rock and a hard place. As much as they would like to have had the parents get in there, they've got to go by the rules here, because God forbid you get a COVID breakout because you didn't follow protocol, you're probably losing your job for starters. So I mean it did put a lot of pressure on the athletic directors.
I imagine most of the ADs you've talked with are very excited to be looking at a normal fall.
We all are. After last year, it can't be any worse. You got to think it's, hopefully, the worst is behind us. We move on, move forward, and go from there.
Danny Ventura joining us from the Boston Herald. Where are you coming to us from?
I'm in Brighton right now.
You're in Brighton, okay. So you live in Brighton. So I imagine the newspaper world, right, you're pretty much working from home, I'm guessing.
Yeah, we've gone pretty much remote for almost a year and a half now. And I think you're going to start, and I think that's going to be a trend of the future. You're seeing it across the country. A lot of places are just saying, there's no reason really to be in a building when you can work from remote.
Tell me how that works in a newsroom like the Boston Herald. So you got to get you got your deadlines. You got to get something. Click send to the editor.
The deadlines don't change. I mean, you still have to put it out there. But in today, with the technology we have today, it's a lot different than when I started 30-something years ago. So you can actually work from your kitchen table and put out a paper.
What's the what was there any real difference? Because I mean, you're used to probably sending articles from a hockey rink or a baseball field, so it probably didn't change your life. Still with me? Sorry about that. I mean,
for us, not too much. I mean, we still, a lot of the guys who are out there, one of the issues that some places, some of the guys, they'd have to get out of there because school, their schools were, once the event ends, most of the time, athletic directors were very, they were fine. They would stick around, take as long as you need. But, during the pandemic, it's like, once this is over, you got to get out of here. So, places like McDonald's became a little more popular because they do have the free Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I understand that. Access to kids, what was that like during the pandemic? Probably not too much.
I mean, from what everyone said, it just seemed, it was the same. You just, you do your interviews, from a distance. You don't get right in their face or whatever, and it worked out fine.
Interesting, very interesting. So, all right, how much of the newsroom would you say is back? Are you guys starting to trickle back in, or is some people always going to be out?
I think some people have trickled back in, but I think a lot of us are still, working remote.
Yeah. It is fascinating. So it doesn't change up your job description too much. I think you're probably right. I think a lot of this is going to be virtual going forward.
I think we're seeing a wave of the future. I think this is what you're going to get.
Fascinating. What would you say has been the big, well, let me ask you this first. Are you the kind of guy do you like doing all the stuff on the computer, since we're talking about that right now? Or do you like getting that finished product and pulling out a newspaper and reading it?
I'm an old school newspaper guy. I got my Herald right here.
There you go.
I go and buy it every day. I mean, I just, a lot of people, they love, the new age, buying it, getting it online. I'm an old school guy. What can I say?
Yeah. What is the talk about? And when you're talking about working for the Herald, I mean, it's one of the biggest papers around, certainly in Boston, but around the country too. What's the talk about when you hear, the kids don't buy newspapers anymore? Because I'm like you, I still get the newspaper, and I know my dad wouldn't know what to do if he didn't know how to stop at the gas station and get his newspaper in the morning. What is the talk in the newsroom about that?
Oh, yeah, I mean, everyone knows it's the wave of the future. Subscriptions are going down, all papers. I mean, you're not selling as many papers as you used to. More, a lot more people, want to get in. They get it right online.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's tough. I mean, and you can't argue it. The facts are there. It is a dying breed.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine I follow you on Twitter, and you have a lot of great information on there. As much as you hear people complain about that medium in particular, it seems like you have found a way to use it very well and successfully, and almost like a bulletin headline news service. Would that be accurate? Have you found it to be a pretty rewarding thing?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I don't do Facebook. Twitter is made for the brainless like me, who can get out there, use 100 words, boom, 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 and that's it. So they must have had me in mind when they created Twitter. But I mean, it does get, it does get out there.
Absolutely. I'm looking at some of your tweets right now, actually, as I go through. You're pretty active on it, so you do a good job keeping up.
Well, I try. I mean, there's always stuff out there. I mean, even now, when quote unquote off season, there's always stuff that comes up. Today I put something out there. Speaking of Thanksgiving, St. John's of Shrewsbury, they sent me their schedule for the season. They said, oh, by the way, we don't have a Thanksgiving Day opponent. And I know the folks in Everett, they don't have it. They need a Thanksgiving Day. So I put it out there. Who knows? Maybe, hey, become a matchmaker. It should be a great Thanksgiving Day matchup between those two.
I remember I had Mike Lynch on Channel 5, and he was talking about how that has made the life of collecting scores so much easier. When he, for instance, he does his Thanksgiving show.
Right.
And it would be, he said he remembers calling the local fire department and having the guys yell, what was it? It was 27-14, right? No, they kicked the field goal at the end.
I mean, Twitter has made our job. I mean, just look at, prior to Twitter, we would probably 8:30 at night still chasing, and you'd hate to call because you wind up calling coaches at home. It is Thanksgiving, but you're trying to get it out. With Twitter, I mean, we probably cut, I'd say, about 3 hours off our job on Thanksgiving, easily.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was no other way to do it, right? You just had to find a way to get the score.
Yeah. I mean, like Mike said, you had to be creative. We've called police stations before.
How do those conversations go?
They laugh about it, but most of them were probably there.
Yeah.
They were doing details. Or in some cases, some of them had kids who played in the game.
Yeah. There you go. It makes complete sense. What's the What's the best Thanksgiving story for you? Is it something about making a deadline at the end, or is it one game that maybe sticks out?
Well, Thanksgiving is fortunate because we don't worry about deadlines because everything is in the morning.
Yeah.
And we have, so it's actually as much as busy as a day it is, it's actually as crazy as it's one of the easier days in that, we do have a lot of stuff, but you do have a lot of hours as opposed to Friday night during the football season where you got basically a 2-hour window to get 60 games in. Whereas Thanksgiving, we have 80 or 90 games, but we have like a 9 to 10 hour window to get it done.
Yeah.
So in that regard, it's a lot easier. I mean, if you're at, the one thing that's always jumped out, people have always asked me is, what Thanksgiving Day, and I always go back to 1997, which was Xaverian St. John's Prep, which got national, because both teams were ranked nationally. ESPN actually, in those days, they were covering high school sports. They sent a truck up here for the game. So that game, and there were people were everywhere, and the game lived up to the buildup.
I think I'm a Danvers guy. I think I didn't go to the prep, but I think I remember. I think I might have went to that game. Was that St. Pierre a quarterback or?
Yes, it was senior. He wound up he had a long touchdown run. They make it 14-13, and then Brian Lentz ran. They went for the 2. Brian Lentz converted it, and they wound up winning 15-14.
Yeah, I remember being at the game. I got that. I remember my dad and I. He wanted to watch the game too, and he wanted, he likes a good seat. I remember we got there at like some bizarre early time for a good spot. We had a great day.
It's funny said because the athletic director, who was the football coach, Jim O'Leary, is adamant. He said that he got there at 6:30 in the morning, and there were people there in the parking lot waiting to get in.
Yeah.
And it was pretty cold morning too.
Yeah, I think that was us. I believe that's the only St. John's Prep game I ever went to.
Well, you did get a good one though.
Ended up being a Danvers High guy, but I was young. It was a good little memory there.
Yeah.
Brian St. Pierre, what a career he had.
I mean, people look. He wins a Super Bowl at the Prep, goes on, has a good career at BC, and then made the NFL. I mean.
Yeah.
Now he's back at his alma mater. He's coaching. He's won a couple of Super Bowls there.
People think like, when you spend a decade in the NFL, even as a backup, people don't realize how good of a career that is.
Yeah, I laugh because he never played much in the NFL. I said, buddy, he got to the NFL. Do you not even the NFL. I mean, people get delusional about how tough it is even to be a Division I quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not many of them around. I mean, and you look in Massachusetts, we've had good quarterbacks. And there's only been like 2 or 3 of them in the last 10 years who've actually played Division I. And then you got someone like Brian, who actually, he started at Boston College and made an NFL roster, and it was in the league several years.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Yeah, it's a great story. Danny Ventura joining us here. Final few minutes with Danny as we talk. What do you do now? So it's like, I imagine this is where you kind of got to get creative. All the sports.
Yeah, well, we actually, because the season went so long, we're doing all scholastics. So usually we get some downtime, but we're still just cleaning up our all scholastics. I'll take a couple weeks off, and then start getting ready, because football is right around the corner. They'll start practicing right around the 20th, right in that range. So, before you look, it's like, wow, they're out there.
Yeah, it really doesn't stop, does it?
Well, this year, not as much as other years. You did get a nice little break, but this year, not much of a break.
What's the one spring in particular, spring sports story that is going to stick with you forever, you think, from the last year?
Well, I mean, I go back to, Xaverian baseball. I've always had a fondness for them because when I first started writing in the 80s, I covered Xaverian. And talking to them in the preseason, and their head coach is a guy named Jerry Lambert, who's a math teacher. And if you look at him, you would think that's a math teacher. He's always a guy who's very analytical. And just talking to him in the preseason, he was like, we're going to really be good. And I'm like, this is not the way he normally talks. And I'm like, I've known you for 30 years, and you're not a big talker like this. He says, I know that. He says, maybe I'm jinxing myself, but I love our team. The kids really love being out there every day. And the end spoke for itself. I mean, they wound up winning the state title. And that's something that'll always jump out, that, there's a coach who really felt that strong in his kids, and his kids lived up to the billing.
That's good. I like that. This show's out of like Newburyport, North Shore. What is there one game that jumps out at you from this neck of the woods that you loved?
Well, the one thing that really jumped out, is just how dominant St. John's Prep was. They wound up winning in lacrosse, and even bigger, the wrestling. Just how they just destroyed the competition.
Yeah.
It just and I know people are going to say, well, it's St. John's Prep. It's a big school. They should win, but it doesn't always work that way. And to have two state champions in the same season, not an easy thing to do. Yet they pulled it off with lacrosse and wrestling, and the baseball was in the state semifinals too. So
you mentioned one of the big Catholic schools here with the Prep. I do wonder, what's your thoughts on the new format with the new playoff format? I know the Super 8 goes away for a bit. What's your thoughts on it?
I think it's going to be very interesting. I'm somebody who felt the Super 8 did serve a purpose, because you did take some of those Catholics out, and you gave the publics a better chance of winning, and particularly baseball and hockey, because those are the two sports where they've pretty much dominated for the most part. And I think putting them all into a statewide format, and I do like the statewide format in general, but I think the potential is there is you may get these early round games, a top seed, which could be a Catholic school, playing someone who could be like a number 32 seed, and it could get ugly.
Yeah, and I always like the idea, like the rallying around the public schools that would get into the Super 8. I always thought that was fun.
Oh, it's great. I mean, you saw with Reading a few years ago in the hockey. I mean, the whole community and they would just chant their zip code. There's a lot of pride in it. You saw it in the Super 8 baseball. With North Andover, Franklin, Braintree, Newton North, they all defied the odds, beat the Catholics and won. And to the people that say they should separate them, for those schools, they're always going to take pride in the fact that, hey, we won it, we beat the Catholics.
Well said. Danny Ventura, we get a lot of high school athletes on this show that I'm sure look ahead at their future, and I know I remember doing it and saying, I would love to cover games for a living. What's your best advice to the young journalists out there?
I mean, to me, if you want to get in the business, the one word you should never have in your vocabulary is no. And it's the way I was trained. The more you say no, the less the opportunities are going to be there. And you're first starting out. I mean, I covered gymnastics, knew nothing about it. I mean, you get an opportunity. You got it, because you never know what that opportunity will lead to.
Do you have a mentor or a big break that you'll never forget?
The guy that it was Hank Hernowitz, who, when I first started writing at the Daily Transcript, he was my first boss. He wound up leaving. He went to the Herald, and I wound up following him 4 years later. And he's a guy that always, he's one of those guys that is not a yeller, but if he said something, you were wise to listen. And someone like Bob Holmes, who went from the Herald to the Globe, and there's the respect we had for one another, that even when he was at the Globe and they're our main competitor, I would never think twice about picking up the phone, calling him if I needed, hey, what do you think about this, this, and this? And it's just the respect, I had for Bob. Those are two guys that jump out.
What is the Globe Herald? I mean, is there a lot of that, or is that kind of? Well,
obviously, I mean, we want to kick their butt every day, and I'm sure if you ask them, they'd say, "Oh, we want to kick the Herald's butt every day." There is competition out there, but you know what I mean. At the end of the day, we're human beings. I get along with the high school sports editor Craig Larson. I've known him for a long time, and we talk to each other.
Yeah, there you go. You bump into each other enough, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. We always end the show with a little rapid fire. Ready to go? First thing that comes to your mind.
First thing that comes to mind.
Here you go.
High school football coming up.
Well, no, I got to ask you the question first. Here you go.
Oh, I thought that was the question.
No. No, this will be easier this way. Ready? Favorite, best game you ever been to your entire life? What is it?
Best high school game? Probably have to be Ed Severian St. John's Prep football game in '97.
We're at the same game. Beautiful. Favorite musician?
Favorite musician? I'd probably go with the Rolling Stones.
All right. Favorite place to see a concert or a sporting event? Either one. What's the favorite venue?
For me, it was Wrigley Field.
Yeah, I've never done Wrigley.
It's phenomenal. Oh, my God, it's great.
All right, that's good. A couple of easy ones. Favorite food?
Favorite pasta.
Favorite sport? Favorite class? Sorry.
Favorite class when I was in high school? Probably history.
History. All right. Actually, I stumbled upon one. But what is your favorite sport to cover?
I would say probably basketball.
Yeah. Was there one sport that you? What's the one sport like that you maybe didn't want to cover, but you learned to have a good appreciation for it? You
So
mentioned
it's
like,
funny you say that because this probably won't be a rapid fire, but wrestling.
wow.
And this what happened. This came up. It would have been in '92. And it's just one of these, being in the right place at the right time. I happened to be walking into the office to grab my paycheck. And the sports editor was there with the publisher of the paper, whose son happened to be a high school wrestler and was wondering, we have notebooks in all these sports. How come we don't have a wrestling notebook? So I happen to walk in. He points to me. You're our new high school wrestling writer. Now, and I knew nothing about wrestling. So I knew two coaches. So I called them up and said, hey, I need a crash course as quickly as you can. And from there, I've been doing it for almost 30 years now, the notebook.
Man, what a story. Who's the best athlete you ever, like, just pure athlete after all these years? Who's the one that's, man, that guy or girl was a star?
I mean, if you look at the boy, Todd Collins would be somebody who really jumped out because he was a guy who could have gone Division I in 3 sports: baseball, basketball, and football. He chose football, wound up going to Michigan, and he had probably played in the NFL probably 17, 18 years. But, Pat Connaughton, if you want to go right up, right now, I mean, everyone, oh, he's a good basketball player, but he was a heck of a baseball player. He was drafted as a pitcher. And there were people who saw him play football as a freshman at the sub-varsity level who said, this kid could be the best quarterback in the school, but he gave that up to focus on the other 2 sports.
Did you ever get to meet him?
Oh, yeah. Great kid. I mean, it's funny because I actually went to junior high with his dad. So, I mean, you could see why, because his dad was one of those guys, even when he was young, he was somebody who carried it, even like as an 8th grader, everyone gravitated to him. He, even back then, 14 years old, he had leadership qualities. And Pat was the same way. You could see just the way he carried, he was a star who didn't act like a star.
Yeah, he's been making some plays.
Yeah.
He's a player, that guy. And who's the best interview you ever had? Like, just like anything, whatever, any interview your entire life. What's the one that you go, man, that was a good interview?
Oh, boy, that's a good question. There have been a lot of good ones. There was the one I always enjoyed. She was a girls basketball player at Wellesley, Brooke Dietrich, who wound up going to Princeton and then played in the WNBA. She was one of those kids. She was just a bubbly kid, but you ask questions, she great answers. She's just somebody that's very easy to root for. I always enjoyed interacting with her.
Interesting. All right. It's funny how those just jump to you. I have my answers too. It's interesting. Last but not least, final question. What would be your, I kind of already asked it, but I want to know, give me like your one line, best career advice for the kids out there. But it doesn't have to be journalism, just best career advice.
Follow your heart. I mean, because if you don't want to do it, if you're not into it, you're not going to do a good job. And you're not that you're cheating your employer, you're cheating yourself. It may mean doing something where you're making less money, but you got to follow your heart. You got to. That's going to lead you in the right direction down the road.
If you're having fun, you won't work a day, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Danny Ventura, man, this is a pleasure. Good to meet you virtually.
Oh, likewise.
I'll see you at a field or in a rink or something along the line here when we get back at it, all right?
Absolutely. You take care.
Thanks now.
Okay, bye now.
All right, there you have it. Danny Ventura of the Boston Herald. He's the regional high school sports editor, reporter at the Herald, 30-year member of Boston Herald Nation. I like that. He says it on his Twitter. That's pretty good. But Danny Ventura, good man, talking a little sports. Oh, look at this. My wife's, see that? That's my wife's marathon drinking thing. Actually, hang on, let me get that. So this is how she tells how much water she drinks. I didn't realize it was in the picture. So fell asleep. This is what happens when she's not here. My whole production goes away. Well, you get the how much you're supposed to drink at 8 a.m., 10 a.m., 12. Yeah. Keep drinking. Keep it up. You're getting there. You got it. Support. How about that? She's running the Boston Marathon. She's drinking a lot of water and running a lot. She's the best. Keep going, Sarah. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Danny Ventura. Another great show live at Drew's house. Peace.